A night like this shouldn't have been so harsh. Torrents of rain battered the pavement, wind shrieking as if the heavens themselves sought to rip the earth asunder. Beams from passing vehicles streaked across the windshield of Ethan's aging truck. But something else seized his gaze, a shape by the roadside. A woman clutching a young girl, both drenched to their core, their bags spilling into a waterlogged ditch. A man in a shadowy coat yelled at them from a car before speeding off, tail lights fading into the tempest. Ethan's hands stiffened on the wheel. He could have just driven by. No one would judge him. Yet something deep within tugged fiercely, a recollection of nights when he and his daughter had no refuge. He jerked the truck to a stop and stepped into the downpour, unaware that this decision would reshape their destinies. He reached them swiftly. The woman tried to compose herself, but her quivering fingers betrayed her. The little girl gripped her mother's leg, trembling, eyes wide like a startled dove. "Are you all right?" Ethan called over the gale. She paused, wary of trusting him, but eventually nodded. We have nowhere else," she confessed, her voice cracking. Ethan glanced at his truck, then at their sodden clothes and the pool forming around their feet. "Get in," he said plainly. She blinked, stunned. "Please, we can't." "You can," Ethan interrupted. "It's safer than staying here." He gathered their belongings and guided them to the warmth of his truck. As they drove, thunder roared overhead, lighting up the woman's tear-stained cheeks. Her name was Grace, and the girl was Ava. They'd been living with Grace's boyfriend, but tonight he cast them out after a quarrel. Ava pressed against her mother, still quaking. Ethan tried to focus on the road, but memories pierced his thoughts. His own daughter asleep at home. The nights he'd prayed for someone to help when his world crumbled. He wanted to ask why she hadn't reached out to family or friends, but her silence carried enough weight. Instead, he drove them to the modest home he shared with his 10-year-old daughter Chloe. Inside, warmth and soft light enveloped them. Chloe peeked from the corridor, curious about the soaked strangers her father brought in. Grace murmured thanks as Ethan handed her a towel, but she kept glancing at the door, as if expecting the man from before to storm in. That night, after tucking Chloe back into bed, Ethan set up a spot for Grace and Ava on the sofa. The storm howled outside, but inside, a delicate peace settled, like a secret needing protection. Morning dawned gentle and overcast. Ethan brewed coffee while Grace sat with Ava, smoothing the child's damp locks. She looked different in the light, still weary but calmer. In halting words, she shared how she'd left a job in another city to live with her boyfriend, hoping it would be safer than raising Ava alone. But the move cost her friendships, and when his anger flared, she had no one to turn to. Ethan listened quietly, the way someone does when they've been there. He didn't pry. He just offered breakfast and a ride to wherever she needed. But Grace wasn't ready to leave yet. She offered to help with chores, cooking while Chloe and Ava colored at the kitchen table. The house echoed with laughter it hadn't heard in ages. Ethan watched them, a pang stirring in his chest, a longing for what was lost and what might be rebuilt, yet doubts lingered. Would her past come searching? Could he risk Chloe's peace for strangers they'd just met? Over the next week, Ethan found himself caring in ways that unnerved him. He fixed the shaky handle on Grace's suitcase, lent her his phone to seek work. He showed Ava how to feed their cat, and Chloe insisted on sharing her toys. One evening, as rain tapped the windows, Grace confessed she hadn't felt secure in years until now. Her eyes met his, a silent gratitude passing between them. But the man who'd abandoned them in the storm wasn't done. One night, his truck rumbled outside Ethan's house. The sight chilled Grace, freezing her in the living room. Ethan stepped onto the porch, shoulders firm, heart pounding. He didn't shout. He just stood resolute, telling the man this wasn't a place for trouble. After a tense pause, the truck sped off, leaving only the sound of rain on stones. When the door shut, Grace slumped against the wall, tears spilling at last. Ethan draped a blanket over her shoulders, unsure what to say. She looked at him, truly looked, as if seeing that kindness could be steady enough to rely on. That night, after Ava and Chloe fell asleep side by side, Ethan and Grace sat in the quiet living room, talking softly about fresh starts and the effort they demanded. They made no promises, but something unspoken took root, solid as the house that sheltered them. By spring, Grace had found a job nearby, and Ethan helped her search for an apartment. Yet most evenings, she and Ava returned to the little house on the town's edge, where Chloe waited with crayons and a grin. Their bond grew slowly, woven from small acts, a shared meal, a mended umbrella, laughter over dishes. The storm that brought them together had also taught them what shelter meant. Ethan often thought back to that night on the roadside, the moment he nearly drove on. If he had, their paths would have stayed apart, each carrying solitude through the rain. But he'd stopped. And because he did, 3 lives, maybe 4, found space to heal. The choice he made in that storm wasn't just about aiding someone else. It was about unlocking a door he hadn't known was still shut within him. And as Grace's laughter blended with the children's voices one golden evening, Ethan knew he'd made the right call.